Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out Entitled Parents. Story 1. My dad is entitled. My son just had surgery. His surgery was hours away from home. I had to be by myself while my son was having surgery. My kids are my everything and I was having a panic attack the whole time, but my husband and I have a disabled son who is a year younger than our son who had surgery. He needed to be watched obviously. I understand. None of my family offered to watch my disabled son. And personally, I probably would have said no if they offered. But it's the offer that counts, right? Anyway. 2 days after my son's surgery we are finally home. He's in a lot of pain and requiring round-the-clock care. He's only 11. My dad called me multiple times though I ignored his call. I was trying to sleep because I haven't gotten any sleep while I've been taking care of my son. He had his wife call, but I ignored that too. Finally I get a text saying my dad is in the hospital and they want me to watch their kids because my dad doesn't want to be alone through the night. I ignored the text. They kept calling. Finally I sent them a text telling them no. He's a grown adult. I shouldn't have to watch my gremlin monster little sisters because my dad is a baby and doesn't want to be alone. My little sisters are younger than my kids, but they are gremlins. They aren't well behaved. They don't listen to a thing you say. I'm not having them around while my son is healing. They are abusive to animals. They broke their cat's leg, so my dad got rid of the cat, and I have 2 cats, and 2 rats. I don't want them in my house with my pets. The last time they asked me to watch their kids I did. They wanted to go hunting. Well, apparently it was too cold to hunt, so they didn't even go. They just went to sleep after dropping the kids off. Which is ridiculous. If you want to have a kid-free day, just ask. But don't lie to me to get me to watch your kids. Not to mention my cat who was never been a mean cat. He is my gentle giant. He's 2x the size of a normal cat. He's sweet as can be. He loves to just sit and watch and he loves a nice nap on your lap. I've had him since he was 6 weeks old. He's almost 4.5 years old, suddenly turned violent and started biting and growling and hissing for months after they left. Since then I haven't allowed them into my house again. To be honest, I'm sure my dad is only in the hospital because he's upset my son is getting attention and not him. My dad is a sociopath. Story 2. Parents try to call the police when I ask them to leave. Sorry if the format looks weird, I'm on the mobile version. I, 16F, never dealt with entitled parents so this is all new for me. For some background, my dad bought a small house, 2-bed 1-bath. Near a beach from my grand aunt and the house has always been in our family. It's on a small patch of land with some yard to the sides of it with an old metal shed with some glass windows towards the back. Everyone in our family uses it and we rent it out when no one's there. We went down this weekend because it was going to be fun and we needed to get ready for renters. It's close to a community park/pool so it's always a little loud and sometimes busy. Behind us is another small house with barely any yard. My parents went out to get some hardware when I stayed home to work on some school work. They can take a long while because traffic is absolutely terrible most of the time. Kids tend to play on our lawn but don't get really loud so we don't mind. I heard a loud bang on something metal but I didn't see anything from the window so I went back to work. Again I heard it around 5 to 7 minutes later. I went outside this time because I didn't know what it was. Apparently there were 2 boys, 10 to 12 years old, playing kickball in our yard. They seemed surprised when I stepped outside the house. I asked them what they were playing and they said kickball. I asked if they could try avoid hitting the shed and the house. They agreed and went back to the house behind ours when I left. 15 minutes go by, I hear it again but I assumed it was a mistake because kids can't really control their kicks sometimes. I hear it again 4 times in the next 10 minutes. I went back outside and found the kids on my family's land again but with the parents. The boys didn't change and were still kicking at the house/shed. When they saw me they stopped playing. I asked the parents and the kids this time to help the kids avoid hitting the house. They seemed to be annoyed by me and told me they are watching them and that I should mind my own business in a pretty snarky way. I was pretty surprised because an adult never talked to me like that. I said I wouldn't mind if they would just stop hitting the house and shed. They said I was being an ungrateful kid on vacation. I responded saying that the yard they were on was owned by my family and so is the house they are hitting, so I don't want it to get damaged. They couldn't care less and pretty much said well, they're kids and they don't know better. I suggested they could play in the park, 5 to 10 min walk away, so they wouldn't hit anything and would have more room to play. They seemed offended and said they weren't paying for that stuff and I was putting their kids in danger. I said it was open to the public free of charge and it was right next to a police station. They seemed to ignore that and said if I don't get away from them and their children they would call the police for harassment and putting kids at risk. I'm annoyed at this point and I reminded them that they own my dad's property and that they could have damaged the property. They seemed angry that I said that and went quiet for a bit. The kids seemed somewhat embarrassed and the oldest seemed mortified and asked if they could just go to the park. The mom said you're right, kid name, we shouldn't waste any more time on this ungrateful brat. They left promptly with the husband and the younger kid in tow. I was shocked and stood there for a bit and soon went back inside. Definitely a new experience and one I don't want again but will probably encounter again in life. Story 3. Parents at Graduation. I don't know if this is really entitled parents, or just oblivious parents. I graduated from law school yesterday, at a sizable state university. All us grads were in our regalia and posing for a group picture on the front steps of the building. A bunch of parents and other family members were continuously getting in the frame of the camera, usually behind the group of graduates. The photographer's assistant was using a bullhorn, telling the parents they had to move, but they just stood there, despite repeated instructions. The assistant finally had to go up to them to tell them to move, that yes, the instructions to get out of the picture were directed at them. Damn it, we worked 3 years for this. Let us have our moment. Story 4. Sister cusses out my daughter at her wedding. So my daughter, we'll call her T, came over to the house to do some laundry and she was asking what the hell is Aunt Liz's problem? I asked what she meant and she explained how my sister had posted on Facebook that she and her husband were going away for their 15th wedding anniversary. T said that she had sent Aunt Liz a congrats post and Liz responded back with very fucking funny. So I sat her down and I told her what I'm about to tell you. When T was 4, Liz had called us and said that she was getting married in a few months. She and I were doing the typical girlisque sounds and oh that's wonderful stuff that sisters usually do. When we calmed down she asked if T would be willing to be the flower girl. I asked her and she said yes and chanted I'ma be flower girl and started running around and pretend flying like she was a new member of the Justice League or something. I told Liz we need to work on it, but she's in. About a month later, the invites came in. In them it was stated that Liz did not want any children under the age of 17 there and explained why. The reasons were sound, bored children, potential disruptions, etc., so I understood them. I did however have one concern. I called her and asked, hey, just got the invites, me and the boys will be there but Hubs has a business trip that month and can't make it. Do you still want T as your flower girl? Liz replied oh god yes. She's too cute to not have her. I shrugged and said well it'll be the 4 of us, consider this your RSVP. She said great. See you there. We hung up and I went online and made the reservations. A room for me and T, and an adjoining room for the boys, Ron, 19, and Carl, 17. Names changed and all that. Fast forward to the weekend of the wedding. The venue is a 6-hour drive for me and I had to get out there on a Friday for the Saturday wedding. Since I had to wait for Carl to get out of school, we got a late start on Friday and we got there around 10 p.m. I got out and checked into the hotel room and I texted Liz. They were still at the venue and would be there at least another hour or two taking care of details so we drove over. We got there and it was the usual pre-wedding chaos. Liz was getting things to her liking and honestly going a bit bridezilla. She saw us first, beamed and came over. However, when she got closer and saw who was in my party, she blew up. "Why did you bring her?" she screamed. I said, "But you wanted her," for I was cut off, and Liz went into a complete screaming meltdown about how this was her day, she didn't want children there, and how dare you bring a fucking child to my wedding? While looking right at T, and then stormed off screeching curses into the night. I was done. T was crying and saying, "But I wanted to be flower girl," in between sobs, and Ron and Carl looked like they wanted to kill their aunt, and at that moment I wasn't sure I wanted to stop them. I picked up T and tried to comfort her and herded the crew back to the car, and we drove back to the hotel. I was seriously considering just packing up the car and heading home. I told the boys that Ron was being the level-headed one. "Mom, it's a 6-hour drive and we're all too tired and pissed to make that drive right now. We'd get in around 5 to 6 in the morning depending on rest stops and bathroom breaks. Do you really want to do that since we have a nice hotel room for the night? How about we go back to the hotel, get a night's sleep and head back in the morning?" I grudgingly admitted that he had a point. Carl piped up, "Mom, I've got another idea." I was waspish and I kinda snapped, "What is it?" Carl looked up from his phone and sheepishly said, "Well, T's pretty upset." Which was true. It's been 15 minutes and she's still sobbing "I wanna be flower girl" over and over in the back seat. Carl continued, "There's a county fair that just started tonight. Carnival rides, petting zoo, games, that sort of thing." I snapped, "So? Carl is made of sterner stuff." He didn't wither under my anger and continued on. "We have the hotel until Sunday morning. Why not spend the night here, go to the fair tomorrow and then go home on Sunday like we planned? Give T something to think about other than Aunt Liz's freakout, let her have some fun, and we all could use a mom and the gang outing right about now." I calmed down a bit and said, "An idea not without merit." I looked at T in the rear view and said, "What about it, T? You want to go to the fair instead of the wedding?" She sobbed, "I wanna be flower girl." Carl piped up, "They're going to have cotton candy and deep-fried Oreos." The crying stopped, there was one last sniffle and an exhausted but determined "I wanna go to the fair." So that's what we did, and we had fun. Liz could have her bridezilla day and that was that. Except that it wasn't. We had all turned our phones off since we knew some calls would be coming in and we just could not be bothered to deal with it. When we got back to the hotel, my mom and dad were there. They lit into me about how T was supposed to be there as flower girl and we just blew my sister and her special day off. "Mom, Dad," I said. "You know how the invites said no children?" I called Liz when we got ours and I asked if she still wanted T as a flower girl. She said that she did. So I brought T to the venue last night and Liz flipped out about how dare I bring a child to her special day. Carl, bless his I can't function without an iPhone in his hand, heart pulled up the video. I didn't know he had recorded it, but he was able to catch the final "How dare you bring a fucking child to my wedding?" I lit into them back. So if T's supposed to be there as flower girl but not be there because she's a child, how am I supposed to pull that off? We went to the fair to calm T down and so she'd have something happy to remember and hopefully forget that Liz cussed her out. To her face. Mom and Dad went quiet, then apologized. They said that they were going to have a word with Liz when she got back from the honeymoon and then had a nice chat with T about the things she saw and did. We drove home Sunday morning and that was that. Story over. Back in the present. T was blown away. "Mom, would I be a bad person for unfriending her and blocking her ass?" I said no and we went back to enjoying some mom and daughter time. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.